microbial management and low sulfur winemaking. Okay, so one of the first things we want to do is obviously to limit the microbial development. And for this, we are gonna have to focus on hygiene and again, respecting the integrity of the grapes. So we already talked about it for controlling oxidation. So already the respect of the grapes are really involving gentle desteaming. So with the Osiris or with the Delta evolution, that's the most gentle desteaming you can have, which will allow you to keep the integrity of the grapes. Having the integrity of the grapes will allow you to not have microbes in contact with the juice and with oxygen, so they will have no substrate and no nutrients to develop, so you limit the risk of contamination and development by controlling and respecting the integrity of the grapes. Then doing some sorting, so sorting out the contaminated fruit can be a very good idea to remove any contamination risk. Protect from oxygen, we already talked about the oxidation risk before, but really protecting from oxygen is important in the idea of you just reduce the amount of food microbes will have. And use antimicrobial agents soon in the process. So early in the process, if you do this, you will really work on a preventing approach. So you will have to use less product, but also you will not have to treat any wine and you will not have any spoilage happening. So it's important to really consider every single point. Then when we arrive at the fermentation really is the most important thing is to ensure a clean and complete fermentation. So you want to make sure you treat your yeast properly and also you treat your bacteria properly. The idea of co-inoculation can be a very good idea, because in this case you really limit the moment where your wine is not protected and where there is no dominant population, so there is a high risk. So you limit this high risk situation, which is a good idea when you want to control microbes and reduce sulfur. And then we will talk about aging, where mostly it's going to be limiting oxygen contact because it is a nutrient for the spoilage microbe, and also using antimicrobial agents as preventive as early as possible in the process. Okay, so you're gonna see like oxidation and microbial development are linked. So we talked about microbe previously, talking about how they can oxidize a wine, but also oxygen is a nutrient for the microbes, so it can also be important to control oxidation to reduce the development of microbes. So both go together. Okay, so the first point is going to be to limit the risk of contamination. When I talk about hygiene, I'm not talking about pure sanitation, I'm talking about cleaning. Cleaning frequently, removing any pockets of material that could be a support for microbes or even nutrients for microbes is essential. So when we design and produce our equipment at Bouquet-Bassin, we already we do think about the efficiency and the practicality. We always want to respect the integrity of the grapes, but we think also about how easy is it going to be to clean the equipment. So you have an example here. In our presses, now we have drains that are quick release, so it's very easy to open. You just like push and open. So no tools needed, very easy, and then you can slide them out of the press. So an easy way to open and clean is very important without any special skills or special tools required. Also, we have the automatic cleaning. So the self-cleaning feature is an injection of water and air at high pressure that will go in the drain and push out any seeds or any skins. So you already, we are not sanitizing, but we are completely removing any solid material that could be source of contamination. Okay, we talked about the steamer previously. To give you an example, an Osiris 50, it takes 15 minutes to clean. So very easy, very quick. We think about also sustainability. So we want to save water. We want to reduce the use of water. So we are thinking about this. So yeah, 15 minutes to clean, it's something easy, it's something doable. And if you do it regularly, it will really help you to limit the risk of microbial contamination. Respecting the integrity of the grapes, we already talked about it. Really, the idea is to limit the contact of microbes with the juice and with the oxygen. So we don't put all these elements together unless we really want to. And grape sorting, you can watch many videos on our sorting options. Booker is a pioneer in sorting technology, so we have every type of technology you could need. Densitometry, we have optical, we even have the alien robotic sorting, and we have vibrating tables that are just manual sorting as well. Sorting out contaminated fruit will really help you reducing the amount of spoilage microbes present in the juice, so controlling the population. Okay, so the next step here is basically, again, like the idea is really like, what can we do to reduce the need of sulfur, which is here, hygiene, respecting integrity of the grapes and grape sorting. Then what do we do instead of sulfur? What are the alternatives that could be maybe more efficient? So when we're talking about microbial control on grapes, I would like to talk about bioprotection. The antimicrobial agents that are available on grapes, we have sulfur, which is not very efficient. We have chitosan and lysozyme. Chitosan and lysozyme are very efficient, but lysozyme only for lactic acid bacteria. Chitosan is very efficient, but much more in wine than in juice. Okay, and I will talk about it for the wine part. Then we have the bioprotection. Bioprotection is a very ancient concept that is seem new these days. Bioprotection is really a natural way to inhibit the unwanted microbial development by putting a microbe that you know and that will be dominant, that you know is positive. So you are making sure that the microbes that dominate is good. So you control, you master the population. Okay, so the idea here when we're talking about grapes is to use a microbe that will not ferment and not inhibit Saccharomyces, okay, but still inhibit the development of the other microbes. We don't want a microbe that will produce any off flavor. We don't want a microbe that will produce any toxin for Saccharomyces, but we do want a microbe that dominate and inhibit the development of non-Saccharomyces and bacteria. So we choose at La Matelier, we choose to work with Metschnikowia pulcherrima. Not an easy one to say. We can call it MP. It will be easier. Or also we call it BioNature. Our strength is called Excellence BioNature, so I'm gonna call it BioNature from now. We choose these strains. We selected the strains of Metschnikowia pulcherrima for the fact that it does not ferment. So you can put it on grapes, on juice, you will still be able to settle. You will still be able to do a cold soaking without fermentation. As it doesn't ferment, you can also, and it does not inhibit Saccharomyces, you can then inoculate and ferment with no problem. And if you do want to use wild fermentation, if you want to go wild, you will see in the discussion later that we can ferment completely with a wild yeast. There is no problem. BioNature doesn't inhibit Saccharomyces. It's a strong dominant yeast, so it will colonize the environment. And how it works is that it produces pulcherrimine. Pulcherrimine is a toxin for non-Saccharomyces and some bacteria. By producing pulcherrimine, the Metschnikowia, the BioNature will inhibit the development of the non-Sac, will inhibit the development of bacteria, but not Saccharomyces, as Saccharomyces is not sensitive to pulcherrimine. Okay? It has a good aromatic impact because it has a beta-glucosidase activity, so we tend to express a little bit more floral and varietal aromas by using BioNature. It has no flavor production. Resist to difficult conditions, so that's important. we can powder it on grapes, and by just powdering it on grapes, it's going to be able to resist to big variation of temperature. It can resist to sulfur, a low pH. It just doesn't resist to alcohol. So as soon as Saccharomyces takes on, BioNature dies. Okay, our BioNature is produced in organic conditions, so it is certified organic, and since it's a yeast, it's a non-allergen product. So I just want to show you some results, but we are going to taste the wine number 2 later, so you will see the result yourself. And basically using BioNature, in this example, you have the sulfur in red. Dark red is no sulfur, but inoculated, and then the green is BioNature plus inoculation. You can see that already reducing sulfur, we are increasing, even without BioNature, we are already increasing in general the roundness and the appreciation of the wine. Then when we use BioNature, we double the cleanliness of the wine, the complexity, we reduce completely the fault present in the wine, increase the balance and the appreciation in general. So really, this has been trials that we made for, I don't know, in 100 wineries with many different varieties, many different terroirs, and we got very similar results every time, that we do increase the complexity, we do make wine without sulfur and that are completely clean, and also with lower VA. So if you see this table here, you can see that, so we're comparing a trial where we use sulfur or no sulfur and BioNature, so of course the total sulfur is higher. What is interesting here is the amount of acetaldehyde produced when we use the BioNature. As we inhibit the development of all the non-Saccharomyces yeast, we actually reduce the amount of acetaldehyde produced. This means that we are reducing the combination of SO2. So the day that we want to add SO2, our sulfur will be more active. It is also part of reducing sulfur. When we are talking about reducing sulfur, it means optimizing its use, using it only when it's needed, and also reducing any molecules that could be potentially binding to it. Okay, so if you look at the last line of this graph, we are looking at how much sulfur we need to arrive to a 35 milligram per liter of free, and basically there is a 24 sulfur difference here. Okay, so it's interesting to see that we make cleaner wine without sulfur, and also wine that will have a better use of sulfur later in the process. In terms of application, how to use the BioNature, you want to sprinkle it on grapes. You don't need to rehydrate it. I told you there is a strong resistance. You can do cold soap with no problem. You can use it on white and rosé. It's not fermenting, so your settling will happen with no problem as well. And if you want to use it with sulfur, you can. It resists up to 80. I put 60 here to be safe. ppm of sulfur. Apply as early as possible, of course, as soon as basically your grapes are picked and you start to have berries that are open. That's when you want to use the BioNature. So as soon as possible in the field, in the harvester, in the truck, if you do transportation. If you don't have any long transport, you can add it at the processing, so after the steaming, basically. How much? 40 to 60 grams per ton, or 5 to 10 grams per hectoliters. Then we use it to reduce, replace, or complement sulfur for microbial control. You can protect the grapes during long transportation and also during cold soaking, so that has been the most of the use for this BioNature. So the idea is to prevent the development of microbes, so we are using the BioNature early in the process, and this will allow us to have cleaner wine later down the road. So far, we still didn't use any sulfur. So if we are talking about controlling oxidation with everything we talked about before and the BioNature, so a protanine R plus BioNature on red grapes will allow you to not use sulfur at all from the reception part. Okay. If we're talking about fermentation management, I'm gonna go very fast on this point. It's pretty easy. You want to make sure your fermentation don't get stuck and you don't get a contamination or an uncontrolled fermentation, because you want to make sure you control your microbes. So it's the same concept than almost the bioprotection. You want to make sure the population that is there is healthy, is dominant, and is gonna do the job until the end. Okay, so to be sure your alcoholic fermentation goes well, you want a proper yeast rehydration, and you want to make sure you limit the stress of the yeast and you have a balanced yeast nutrition. I have an entire webinar on yeast nutrition, so I'm not gonna develop too much about this, but the two key products at this moment would be a nano-steam, which is a rehydration nutrient, and OptiFloro, which is our 100% organic nutrient. Then when we arrive to the malolactic part, that's where it gets a little bit more complex. Alcoholic fermentation wild is fine. Now, if we control and we look at the kinetic very carefully, there is no problem. Malolactic wild, that's where there is a little bit more danger, because as soon as you let a bacteria going wild, you don't know, and you're not for sure knowing that it's going to be an Ococcus honey. And if it's not, you take a very big risk to produce biogenic amines, which are associated with very bad aromas, such as rotten flesh, dead bodies, but also like stagnant water, pond, algae, fish flakes, aquarium. And they are responsible for headache. So when people are blaming, were saying that the wine gives them headache, it's the biogenic amines, because histamine is one of them that will it's an allergen. So biogenic amines are allergenic, and they are responsible of headache in wine, in addition to bad off aromas. You take the risk to have mousiness if lactobacillus develop, but also to have a high VA, to have some volatile phenols, and a lactic, cheesy, and rancid character. So very bad things can happen if you don't control malolactic fermentation. A lot of off aromas can happen, and we don't have many ways to remove these off aromas without really draining the wine, I would say, like puring the wine through refining. So important to control. I highly recommend to inoculate malolactic fermentation with our NO1. I highly recommend to control the temperature. Also, another option that can be a very good approach is the co-inoculation. Co-inoculation is a good idea when you have difficult malolactic fermentation, or to just reduce this risky time and just be done controlling both fermentation at the same time. Co-inoculation comes with some requirements, some risk. So I'm happy to talk more about this another time or later in the webinar, but also we have a webinar on this. Our NO1 is particularly good for co-inoculation with our Excellence XR, which is our yeast. Okay, so the next step is going to be managing microbes during aging. And here, so when we are talking about managing microbes during aging, we are first focusing on prevention. If you are able to, after malolactic, making sure you are preventing, eliminating any microbes that are present and controlling that there is no situation favorable for them, you will be good, and you probably don't even need sulfur at this moment. So you want to control dissolved oxygen for oxidation, but for microbes too. Temperature and pH. Temperature is going to be a very big parameter to control. As soon as you go higher in temperature, as soon as spring arrives, usually microbes start to develop like crazy, just because of the temperature. Check your lees. Lees, it's where the microbes are. So if you do have a contamination, you do want to do a fining. And if you don't, just keep smelling and tasting your lees, because they are a very good indicator of the state of your wine. Your topping wine is essential. That's probably the most common contamination reason, is that the topping wine is contaminating, and then you can keep inoculating each barrel by using it. So your topping wine should be the one that you check the most often and that you treat the most often too. And then use antimicrobial agent early in the process. In this case, you use very little concentration, and you don't have to use a lot and don't have to treat your wine for off aromas too. So it's much easier to control them when you are preventing and the population is low. What do we have available to us to remove the cells of the microbes, to kill our microbes? We have lysozyme. Lysozyme is very good as antimicrobial for bacteria, for lactic acid bacteria. So it's a egg white protein, so it is an allergenic product, very efficient against Lactobacillus, Pediococcus, Staphylococcus. You can use it on juice or on wine. Just know that there is some side effect of lysozyme, as it is a protein and it's an allergen molecule. Okay, CHITOSAN, I'm going to focus a little bit on CHITOSAN in the next slides because I like this molecule, because it's my favorite molecule, I think, in winemaking, but also it is the widest spectrum antimicrobial agent that you can have. So yeah, we're going to talk about it. It's an awesome molecule that really eliminates many microbes with a very small dosage, and also lasting time, so is active as a protective also. Sorbate is for yeast. You don't want to use sorbate with bacteria presence, otherwise you will end up with a geranium taint. So we use sorbate in sweet wine, usually just pre-bottling to stabilize and to prevent re-fermentation. DMDC or Velcorin is usually also used in just pre-bottling as an agent that will kill the yeast, mostly focusing on not having a second fermentation and not having Brettanomyces contamination. The next step, so you prevent, you remove the cells, and then you keep preventing, you maintain your protection. That's where sulfur can be used. Sulfur is a good inhibiting agent when it's managed with pH. So we're talking about molecular sulfur in microbe management, but also CHITOSAN can do the job of protecting for 6 to 4 months. So let's talk a little bit more CHITOSAN. CHITOSAN is a wide spectrum antimicrobial agent. It's made from the deacetylation of chitin, which in winemaking it's a polysaccharide that comes from Aspergillus niger. CHITOSAN is 5 or 6 years that it's on the winemaking market. It is centuries that it's in the medical, cosmetic, pharmaceutical market. But in this industry, it comes from the shell of the crustaceans. So because we don't want to use allergenic product, we are using one derived from Aspergillus niger in winemaking. As you can see, the molecule of CHITOSAN is positively charged, and that's how it's gonna work. So there is an attraction, so every single microbes have some negative residual charge on their cell walls. So there is an attraction as a magnet of the CHITOSAN and the microbe by a charge attraction, okay? At this moment, there is a reaction with the membrane. The CHITOSAN is gonna block the receptors of the membrane, which is interrupting the cell metabolism. So the cell can't exchange with outside, the cell can't bring food inside, so there is no more activity of the cell, so no more life. So this is going to lead to death of the cell. But also the CHITOSAN is going to perforate the cytoplasmic membrane, so the cell is going to leak. Another action that CHITOSAN does is that it can chelate metals, which are essential for the cell's metabolism. So by chelating metals, we are depleting metals. We deplete the environment of the metals, which means that the cell is gonna alter the metabolism of the cell, and then we settle them down. So CHITOSAN attract them, change their activity, kills them, and eliminate them by settling down. Pretty effective. I'm going to show you some pictures. So here you have gram-negative and gram-positive cell walls bacteria. When we add the CHITOSAN, I want to show you this because we see how it works on bacteria too. You can see that basically the CHITOSAN is going to block the receptors on the side, so you have no nutrient flow. So the bacteria can't really be active or be healthy, and it's going to die since it can't eat anymore, and the full metabolism is interrupted. Also, as a second step, especially on the gram-positive, it's going to be able to completely break down the membrane, so we will end up with a leakage of the cell. If we look at Brettanomyces, Here you have like this spongeous material that is chitosan, that is attracting as a magnet Brettanomyces cells. As you can see, they are stick to it. Then if we look at the treatment here, a cell, yeast cell before treatment, after treatment, 5 minutes after the addition of chitosan, you can see that the cell is already leaking, is already empty inside, and there is some pieces of the cell outside. So the cell is completely leaking. Another pictures here, these pictures are pretty cool actually, where you can see the wine without treatment. So the cells are completely integral and full, complete, healthy. We add the chitosan. 1 day after, the cells start to leak. You can see there is some material outside. The cells have some holes. 4 days after treatment, half of the cell is already out of the cell. 8 days after treatment, there is no more cells. We can't even see it. The entire microbes is outside, degraded. Okay, so pretty violent, very effective. Chitosan that's how it works. It's a very efficient antimicrobial agent that works on bacteria, on Brettanomyces, on lactic acid bacteria, acetic acid bacteria, and Brettanomyces. So Lamotte developed KillBrett, as you can see in your screen, which is 100% chitosan, which means that basically we have a very efficient treatment at very low dosage, so we have a limited impact on the organoleptic profile. I highly recommend to use it as a preventive, so just after malolactic, even if you don't think you have any microbial contamination, as a very low dosage, we are talking about 2 to 4 grams per hectoliters. You put it there, it's going to eliminate whatever is alive in your wine, and it's going to go down. And that's all you have to do. You don't have to rack in this situation. It's going to stay active for a good 4 months. If you do have a contamination, we also have a solution. Usually, we are recommending to rack before the treatment because you can already eliminate some of the lees, so you reduce the amount of KillBrett you need. So you can rack it off the lees, and then you will add 5 to 8 grams per hectoliters, depending the microbe and depending the population concentration. And then about a week, the time it settles, you will rack it off. Okay, so it's a vegan, allergen-free fining agent that helps you to control malolactic fermentation. It removes spallage microbes and it can prevent spallage. You understand why it's one of my favorite molecules. It's a very good molecule. Anyway, I think I have a little bit of time, so I'm going to show you very quickly some results where we compare. We did some trials in Burgundy and Bordeaux, where we reduced the sulfur usage during aging. So we have a wine that we kept at 30 milligrams per liter of free sulfur, one that we put at 15 milligrams per liter of free sulfur to see if we could reduce, and one that we didn't put any sulfur, but we put 4 grams per hecto of KillBrett. Okay, so you can see here the evolution of sulfur. You can see that the KillBrett stay around 20, while the one that we added 30 milligrams per liter of free sulfur is now at 80 at the end of the trial, ppm of total sulfur. Okay, one interesting point that I wanted to share with you is the impact on color. Where using sulfur have a very strong bleaching effect. You realize it when you don't use sulfur, you can see, so you can see the green line here, you can see that we have much more color. It is the one with just a KillBrett without sulfur, much more intense color, and also the hue is higher, which means that we are having much more red, okay? So we are measuring the 420 on a 520 ratio, so the highest is more red. So looking at the effect on bacteria, lactic acid bacteria is a graph on the left side of your screen. We are more or less the same effect. So we managed to reduce the lactic acid bacteria by using sulfur or no sulfur and KillBrett. It has been working the same way. Then if we look at the effect on acetic acid bacteria, you can see that at the beginning of this trial, we were not having very good hand on acetic acid bacteria. They start to grow, especially in June when it starts to be warmer. But we also realized we had dissolved oxygen. So at this point, we use a tannescence volume that I talked about previously, untoasted oak tannin, and Aroma Protect, our yeast derivative rich in glutathione. the tan essence volume is going to catch the oxygen radical. Aroma protect low down the redox potential. And like this, you can see that we completely managed to reduce, it was immediate, we reduce the population right away by basically removing the dissolved oxygen and reducing the redox potential, making the bacteria uncomfortable. Then at this point, what is interesting is when we use the KillBrett, these reductions keep reducing, while with sulfur, we just basically didn't protect at all and the bacteria just climbed back right away. So KillBrett is as efficient as sulfur for controlling lactic acid bacteria, or even better, and it is better for acetic acid bacteria. Then a good strategy, it's completely different, but a good strategy is to really control your oxygen, dissolve oxygen, and using untoasted octanins and aroma protect as playing with redox potential will help you reducing your micropopulation. Then last part on Brettanomyces. So here in this trial we were looking at a control and a control stirred, and then KillBrett with no sulfur, KillBrett with no sulfur stirred. Basically what we are seeing here is when we stir the wine, we are increasing the population. We are putting back in suspension all the dead cells that leaked, so all nutrients for the cells that are still alive, and we put back in suspension the cells that are alive. So we reactivate everybody, so we increase the population of Brettanomyces, which is a red line, and we increase the amount of volatile phenol because they are active. When we use KillBrett, so we eliminate completely the population. Then when we do a steering, we do increase the population because we put them back in suspension, but they are not active because if we look at the purple dot, there is no production of volatile phenol. So KillBrett has been able to remove Brettanomyces cells and prevent the production of aromas, blocking their metabolism. Okay, steering the lees is not a good option because you increase the risk of contamination. And also, so we have further trials that actually show that this effect is lasting for at least 4 months. So the conclusion on microbial management, really focusing on preventing is the key. Preventing will allow you to not, so sulfur is actually not a good option to manage microbes. It will help maintaining a protection, but it doesn't eliminate them. So you want to prevent starting from the vineyards, respecting the integrity of the fruit, using BioNature on the fruit to really inhibit the development of microbes before they become too big. Good fermentation management, good sanitation, cleaning, and cellar practices, manage your dissolved oxygen strongly. Fining and racking of lees is a very good option. This will allow you to reduce the overall microbial population and also increase the efficiency of your antimicrobial agents, which means reducing the dosage you use. So less impact on the wine and a lower cost of treatment. Don't stir the lees because you are going to increase the risk of population or limit the lees steering. And KillBrett is really your best option for aging, as it will treat every single microbe. It works better than sulfur. It works for at least 4 months. You can use it as preventive and you can use it as a treatment. So there is some recommendation on your screen here, but really I'm happy to talk more about this if you have more questions during the question and answer portion.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Casey Caesar, Scheid Family Wines. So what we've got here is a trial that we did this harvest. This is actually our second year doing this trial. We did a few adjustments this year. So we have an organic vineyard planted that's going to be coming on next year, 60 acres down in Hames Valley, which is very southern Monterey. So we planted mostly Petit Sirah on that vineyard. So that's been our focus with our organic winemaking protocol. So we wanted to take a technical approach. So working with Eglantine, we developed a protocol of what you're seeing today. So with the SO2, we did a 50-part add at crush, another 50-part add after malolactic fermentation, and I'll go through the variables that we did with the organic protocol, but we did all the same additives. The only difference was that one had SO2, and in wine 4, our no SO2 protocol. So we started with BioNature, the Meshnakobia. We inoculated that just a dusting as the grapes were being loaded into the fermenting tank at a 5 gram per hectoliter rate, so very small. And then we used a sacrificial tannin, enzyme, some oak dust, and then a little bit of nutrient. We added at a third of the way through fermentation. For the must, we used a organic yeast that we inoculated 24 hours after the BioNature. And then another 24 hours after that, we inoculated with our malolactic bacteria to do like a co-inox sequential inoculation to try to be done with MLF after fermentation. And then finally, we racked the wine after it was finished into a tank, had some American Hungarian oak staves, and that's when we used Aroma Protect, that glutathione-rich yeast derivative. Sparged the tank down so the DO was below 0.3 milligrams per liter. And then we've just been keeping an eye on it. We've also been doing some micro dosing with lagactannin. And so this was sampled in December and still holding up well. And since this time, the wine 4 has gotten 2 additional doses of the Aroma Protect and lagactannin. And as you can see from the numbers at the end of alcoholic fermentation, Scorpion panel showing, and this is consistent 2 years running, that the BioNature, the Meshnakobia ended up making a cleaner wine than the control. And in terms of chemically, everything's pretty much the same. No big spikes in VA. We added a little acid at the beginning of fermentation. pH was about 3.8. And then, after MLF, it kind of popped back up there. We did another smaller add of acid as well after malolactic fermentation, just to keep that acid a little bit more in check for microbial growth. But yeah, the wine's actually very similar to what they taste like now in the cellar. The wine made with SO2, I opened mine up about an hour ago. But when I first opened it, it was similar to what it's like now in cellar, where it has a bit of a reductive quality to it. For us, that's not too big of a deal at this phase. As the wine develops, it actually will open up a lot more, and that kind of reductive aroma will go away, and those more classic Petit Syrah aromas will come through. And the wine made without SO2 has that floral violet quality to it that I think that Meshnakobia is really giving. But it's always kind of just been a more opened wine since the beginning. So the first year doing this trial, I really loved that aroma. Right after fermentation, it kind of held on for 4 or 5 months up until, a little bit before this time of year. But the big difference this year was kind of trying to preserve those aromas. Those started going away, and the aromas started becoming a little bit more oxidized, a little more pruny. So using Aroma Protect and more microdosing with tannin adds was a lot more helpful in preserving those aromas. That's pretty much the trial. I don't have any questions.
So there is some questions. I am gonna need to. So they have questions, but very general between the presentation and the trial. So I can go through the questions, and then I will probably ask also Jonathan and Michael to share their experience with microbial control. But let's start with some questions. So Kylie Evans asked, does perchlorine impact Saccharomyces? And on this, Kylie, no, but Casey, did you see, or even Michael or Jonathan, did you see any impact by using BioNature on the alcoholic fermentation?
For my experience, I've had, and this is 2 years using it. I mean, that's not a huge sample size. I've also used Meshnakobia and other kind of co-fermentations just as a aromatic and try to add complexity, and no fermentation I've really had any issues. This fermentation took a few more days, but everything went dry. And I think it only took a few more days because I inoculated the first one initially with Saccharomyces and didn't have, it was just a delay in inoculation. So the actual fermentation time with Saccharomyces was basically the same. So I've never had an experience with Mechnicovia having an issue with fermentation kinetics.
And we did 2 experiments last year on 2 different vineyard parcels of ours where we split it into traditional and with BioNature. And we used the same yeast strain on both the traditional and the BioNature. And fermentation-wise, we had no issues at all. Fermentations took off, they were healthy. About a third of the way through, we added nutrients, and then everything finished dry.
Yeah, we had a similar experience. We had no problems with our alcoholic fermentations. Everything went through as quickly as it would have before we started using BioNature. So our fermentation times ended up being about the same as before we started using BioNature.
I have a question here that I'm not sure if you, maybe I can answer, but I want your opinion too. So the question is, can I use BioNature if I'm not inoculating with a commercial yeast? And the answer is yes, of course, because the BioNature doesn't inhibit Saccharomyces, so your own Saccharomyces is gonna go, and even better, you will really select the Saccharomyces. But did one of you did a wild fermentation after using BioNature?
I've done wild fermentations, not this Mechnicovia. I've used other non-Saccharomyces with the intent of using it as a antimicrobial and to reduce any potential spoilage organisms or something that would heighten VA or give a lot of ethyl acetate. So I found non-Saccharomyces pre-fermentation for a native ferment is actually a really great tool for that unless that's what you're going for. To make a bit of a cleaner native fermentation. I found that was a great tool.
We actually, all of our ferments, so all of our Pinot Noir ferments, we do native. So we didn't actually use BioNature with any additional yeast. All of our tanks were native fermentations, and it worked great. We were a little hesitant at first because we traditionally had been using sulfur. So when we started using BioNature, we actually did a small sulfur add in addition to adding the BioNature. But then we saw such positive results that we actually ended up eliminating using any sulfur and then just letting all of our fermentations go native.
And we use all cultured yeast.
So the next question from Clark Smith, BioNature or Mechnicovia Pulcherrima does seems miraculous. Apart from doing selection, do you have any idea why it suppresses everything except Saccharomyces cerevisiae? Clark is, so the Mechnicovia, the pulcherrimine that is produced by Mechnicovia, it happened to be a toxin for the non-Sac and bacteria, but Saccharomyces resist to it. So that's the reason why Saccharomyces is not sensitive to the Mechnicovia. Then, when do you rack the wine after KillBrett curative addition? One day after addition, or wait until 8 days for total destruction of the cells? Okay, sorry, this one is for me, but it's so you will need to, if you want to rack it, you just need to wait that it settles. So usually 8 days is good. 1 day you will not have it settled yet. That's a question from Frederick. So then I'm just gonna ask you. So can Jonathan explain? Can you explain us how you use the BioNature and really like which results you saw, and also if you do anything else in your cellar?
Sure. So we tried to keep the control and the BioNature process exactly the same. Typically, we will add SO2 on the crush pad, after we either at the must pump, or if we're going into a sump to manually put the grapes into the tank. The SO2 will get added there. We added the BioNature in its place for the BioNature trial. And then we didn't add anything else besides yeast and nutrients until after fermentation, where we added a malolactic culture. And then we actually found at the end of malolactic fermentation that the BioNature allowed the malolactic culture to go a little bit faster. Typically those two were about 4 days to a week faster to the control. And then on both of them, we added 50 parts of free SO2 after malolactic fermentation. We also found that this was both on Cabernet, and we found that the BioNature was more elegant, more rounded, and the tannins were actually softer and better integrated with the BioNature.
Thank you. Michael, do you want to also share your experience and like how you applied it and what you saw?
Yeah, so we applied all of our BioNature just dry, but we tried to distribute it well throughout our tanks. So during sorting, we would try to sort of sprinkle it in as we were filling our fermenters. And then we originally were interested in using BioNature to sort of cut our SO2 adds, but we were also experiencing ethyl acetate issues in a couple lots, historically the same lots from the vineyard over the course of a number of years. And that's sort of what got us interested in trying it out in the first place. But we didn't want to increase our SO2 additions because we do everything native, so we wanted to sort of minimize using SO2 where we could. So we would sprinkle it into the fermenters, and those lots came in early, and we noticed very positive results aromatically. Had no ethyl acetate production in any of the lots that we had problems with, and that's when we decided to sort of convert all of our Pinot Noir ferments this year over to using BioNature.
Great. So I think you just did answer to a question that got asked. Like, question was, what was the motivation to use the BioNature instead of sulfur for your native Pinot ferment?
Yeah, so that was our primary motivation, was just to address our ethyl acetate issue. But we are taking steps to sort of reduce SO2 additions wherever we can, and this seemed like the next logical step to cut our SO2 use.
Jana, there is a question on how the cost of using BioNature compared to just SO2. That obviously it's higher. Sulfur SO2 is probably one of the lowest cost additive you can use. So yes, it will be higher using BioNature than sulfur. Clark is making a comment which can be for Casey, that he also saw an increased reduction in sulfide-free wine. So that's what you saw, right? And that's what we are having in some of the samples, at least in December was like this.
Sorry, you're noticing a reduction? Is that what you said?
Yeah, in sulfur-free.
In sulfur-free, yeah, exactly. Yeah, very similar.
We have a question from Oyan. Is anyone using Mechnikovia on rosé? So Jonathan, you don't make rosé, so you didn't. Casey, Michael, did you try it on rosé?
Oh, we did not. We're not making rosé here.
Haven't tried it on rosé yet, but that's the plan for this next harvest. So.
I know that some people did try on rosé. They try it on rosé during their maceration to just get their color right, and it did a pretty good job, because the idea is that since the BioNature does not ferment, you can completely settle after with no problem. That's one of the reasons also why we selected one that is not fermenting, so it doesn't produce gas, so you're okay with settling. The results were mostly a decrease of VA. That's mostly what we saw.
Yeah, I saw a question about if I use sacrificial tannin. And yeah, so both of these trials that I did, the only difference was in the wine 4. I used BioNature as my antimicrobial up front and Aroma Protect as my antioxidant on the back end. And that basically replaced with the control, which was wine 3, which I used sulfur up front and sulfur at the back end. But all the other additives, sacrificial tannin, enzyme, oak dust, the oak that it's on, nutrient, all that stuff, all the yeast, all the yeast except for the BioNature was the same between both trials. So you're really just looking at the difference between what's a wine made with sulfur versus a wine that's made with BioNature and Aroma Protect.
There is another question for you, Casey. Have you bottled any of your no SO2 protocol wine? And if so, how have the organoleptic qualities lasted with age?
Yeah, it's great. So we bottled some from last year, but that's something that's still developing. They don't have too much bottle rest. So I can't really comment too much on it since it is such a young trial for us. I have had some, no SO2 wines that were 5. I think I have one on the shelf that's from 2010 that it held up amazingly well and still has interesting freshness to it. And I've had organic wines from 2 years bottle age that have completely lost their aroma. So we're still working on that. So yeah, sorry, I don't have a good answer for that question.
I have another one for you. That's from me. But what was your goal with using Aroma Protect?
The goal this year, as I said before, with our previous year's trial, we lost aromatic freshness. We lost those really pretty aromas, the kind of petite Syrah divining aromas, and it turned kind of more to the oxidative, kind of pruny side of things. And so the goal with Aroma Protect was to supplement the wine with some antioxidant, along with the elactic tannin and along with accounting for DO, to try to preserve the freshness of the wine as long as possible until we get it into bottle.
A question for the 3 of you. Anybody tried CHITOSAN or KillBrett, and do you have any experience? Do you have any feedback or comment on it?
This case, I'll comment on. Sure. We've used CHITOSAN and it works awesome. I mean, as you've seen in the data, the trials we've done with it are very similar. The trial last year, I used CHITOSAN as kind of a third section to the trial, and it was we actually used it pre-fermentation, pressed off so that it would allow for malolactic fermentation, then post-malolactic. And yeah, it worked. It works great. Yeah.
We have not yet had any experience with CHITOSAN, but I think that may be our next logical step for reducing our SO2 use even further.
And for us, we're planning on doing some trials this year with the 2020 wines.
Yeah, I've also used it for Brett control, and it's actually works phenomenally well for that as well. We test all of our barrels every year to make sure, if we test positive for any Brett, and hopefully catch it if it comes up. I've used it and it works great. It really does actually reduce or almost eliminate the population in some cases. It's a really great tool.
There is one pretty general question which I think the 3 of you can comment on. Any comment on the color intensity and the hue? I guess between sulfur or no sulfur in the red wine.
Yeah, we definitely noticed a very positive impact having cut out our sulfur use. Definitely better color intensity. We noticed pretty much straight away with switching to BioNature.
We actually use wine x-ray, so I was able to compare the BioNature versus the control, and we had a higher total amount of bound anthocyanins on the BioNature. I want to say it was probably about 10% more.
Yeah, and I guess we've been doing it mostly with Petit Syrah, and you can kind of see in front of you. But yeah, I'm excited to actually try with Pinot Noir next year, because I think, yeah, for one, those bound anthocyanins, I think that's a fair conclusion. You could assume that would happen, which is awesome. And I hate having to add sulfur to Pinot and just watch all that beautiful color kind of fall out after fermentation. So I'm excited to kind of try that next year.